That's not what I'm here to tell you.
Shh, it's the Film Flamers.
Hey guys, I'm Chris.
Happy Pride Month, I'm Robert.
And we're the Film Flamers.
Bringing you another Pride-filled episode, and I think we are going into uncharted territory for the Film Flamers as we're going to be talking about lesbians.
Lesbian sequels.
What's the blast from that Jurassic Park past?
We shall be talking about our wonderful sisters, and this is one of the best horror films, at least according to some people, of 2018, right?
Yeah, I think according to some, including myself, the best horror movie of 2018. Yeah, I think I've talked about it on this podcast many, many times. We're finally deep diving into What Keeps You Alive. So What Keeps You Alive is a 2018 Canadian thriller film written and directed by Colin Minahan. It stars Hannah Emily Anderson and Brittany Allen, who also composed the score, and follows a young woman fighting for her life as her wife's murderous intentions become evident.
The film was originally written about a heterosexual couple, only to be changed to a lesbian couple at the last minute, due to outside factors. Minahan has said that introducing a queer woman in the place of a male villain helped to normalize the queerness of the characters. Outside of some minor shifts, the story focuses very little on the gender dynamics between the main characters, creating a sense of presumed equality in their relationship, only to have it snatched away. Is that a gay joke?
It's a lesbian joke. Okay, listeners, this is what keeps you alive.
There's a demon. I never told you about my first wife, did I? Erica. We got married when I was only 19. I mourned her, prayed with her parents, cried at her funeral. And of course, that has to look like an accident.
Did Megan not tell you anything about Jenny?
No, never. I'll do the same at yours. You must be confused. I mean, why would your wife do this to you? Probably thinking, we're in love, right? Feel that? Your heart is racing. What do you feel?
Steady.
Exactly. Done playing around. I know these woods like the back of my hand.
What turned you into this monster?
It's nature, not nurture.
All those people, they trusted you. I trusted you.
I'm free in all the ways you're not. You're trapped by emotions. Weighed down by guilt.
You are never going to do this again. I'm not going to let you do it again.
Your conscience isn't a source of strength. It's your Achilles heel. My dad, he used to say to me, you only kill what keeps you alive.
I will bleed myself dry.
Why are you doing this?
Jackie, played by Hannah Emily Anderson, takes her wife Jules, played by Brittany Allen, to a remote cabin to celebrate their first anniversary, subverting the traditional lesbian anniversary norms of spending it at Home Depot or, in a pinch, Lowe's. After their arrival, Jules becomes suspicious when Jackie's childhood friend Sarah, played by Martha McIsaac, visits and addresses Jackie as Megan. Jackie explains that she changed her name by choice, but Jules isn't satisfied and visits Sarah and her husband Daniel across the lake while Jackie's out of the house, presumably at her side gig as a gym teacher. Sarah explains that Jenny, a girl who was friends with her and Jackie, accidentally drowned in the lake when they were young and expresses surprise that Jackie never mentioned it. Jackie later claims that she failed to mention Jenny because she believed the accident was her fault, although the police did clear her of any wrongdoing. Jules embraces her wife and consoles her. Moments later, while admiring the view of the wilderness, Jackie shoves Jules off the edge of a cliff. Jackie returns to the cabin, doing her best Debbie Adams impression by practicing the tearful phone call she's going to make to the police to report Jules' death.
It's Deborah.
But Jules, while seriously hurt, is still alive, despite her flannel and Birkenstocks being worse for wear.
It's so offensive. I love it.
When Jackie discovers her wife has survived and fled the area below the cliff, she searches the forest for her, pretending to sob and begging for Jules' forgiveness. After all, it was an accident. Jules is tempted to show herself until Jackie, growing impatient and unaware she's being watched, breaks character to reveal the concern is all an act. Jules flees, makes it to the house, and tends to her injuries. She then makes it halfway across the lake towards Laura's house in a rowboat before Jackie catches up to her. Laura's husband Daniel, played by Joey Klein, sees the pair and, despite Jackie's quiet threats not to reveal the situation, Jules arranges for them to come for dinner that evening, obviously hoping she can somehow ask them for help when the time is right. Jackie reveals that she never loved Jules and intends to murder her to cash in on her life insurance policy, as she's done to numerous other innocent lesbians. Sarah is suspicious of Jackie. Having threatened to kill both Sarah and Daniel, Jackie forces Jules to pretend everything's normal, but catches Jules trying to get help from Sarah. She slits Daniel's throat outside, chases Sarah upstairs, and fatally stabs her numerous times. Jackie then forces Jules to help her dispose of the bodies, cutting them up with an axe. When asked how she became this way, Jackie reveals that she had always been devoid of a conscience, saying it was nature, not nurture. Jules peeks behind the stuffed head of a bear that Jackie supposedly killed as a child and discovers a box containing necklaces that Jackie had given to her previous wives, all of whom she killed. Jackie then drives Jules back to the cliff, where she intends to push her wife off again, but Jules manages to escape by stabbing her in the neck with a tranquilizer dart she pocketed earlier. Jules escapes in the car, but must have suffered severe brain damage from her earlier fall because she decides to return to confront Jackie herself, rather than get to safety and inform the police. The two fight, but Jackie eventually gets the upper hand, knocking her out and finally throwing her over the cliff of lesbian doom. Confident that Jules is now dead, she calls the police with her pre-rehearsed message. Now that everything's taken care of, Jackie, a diabetic, injects herself with insulin, but starts to feel a bit woozy. Just then, she discovers a video on her laptop that Jules had made prior to their confrontation, that the insulin is spiked with hydrogen peroxide. The peroxide causes blood clots in Jackie's system, and after wandering into the woods, she collapses and dies of a massive stroke. Back at the bottom of the cliff of lesbian doom, Jules' body lies motionless and bloody. She takes a breath.
The end? Wow.
Sorry guys, so that synopsis is we're just having a little fun with our sisters. I mean, after all, we do call ourselves the Film Flamers, right?
That's right. And we're all very sorry about that synopsis, Jackie.
It's Megan.
What Keeps You Alive had its world premiere at the South by Southwest Film Festival on March 10th, 2018. The film also screened at Inside Out, the Sydney Film Festival, Cinepocalypse, and Popcorn Frights. IFC Midnight acquired the film for distribution in the U.S. The film opened in Los Angeles and New York on August 24th, 2018, and became available on VOD on the same day. It has a listed box office of almost $21,000, but no budget is reported.
21,000? I would have expected at least 210,000 or something. Maybe they left off a zero.
It throws me off whenever I see small numbers like that. So it means 3 people went to go see it. You know? I mean, well, obviously they paid $1,000 each or whatever.
Or, more than that because math.
And I'm sure that it's gotten some residuals, right? So it's been on VOD and streaming for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like things like these that are available on VOD the same day, that's how they get their money. And all of that is kind of kept close to the chest by whoever's, streaming it. So we never really know. But maybe 10 years from now we will. Who knows?
Right.
What Keeps You Alive has an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes and is certified fresh. The film holds a 43% audience score, however. The site's consensus reads, smart, stylish, and well acted, What Keeps You Alive proves it's still possible to spin an engrossing horror yarn without fundamentally altering established formula. Metacritic reports a weighted average of 66 out of 100, indicating generally favorable reviews.
Jamie Rigetti of IndieWire gave the film a B+, writing, one of the most refreshing aspects of What Keeps You Alive is that the film offers a much-needed upgrade to the final girl trope, and praised the performances of Anderson and Allen, as well as the scares in the film. She did criticize the predictable beats, but concluded that the film is a welcome look at what can happen when the final girl trope is allowed to evolve.
Conversely, Roger Moore of Movie Nation gave the film a score of 1.5 out of 4 stars, writing, why tell us everything when good actresses can simply show it? That's something any filmmaker fretting over making a not-as-good thriller should utter as a mantra, even if what they're showing us grows more preposterous than fun. How would a director know if he's making a not-as-good thriller? I mean, fuck yeah.
I mean, like, what, in the editing chair, you're like, oh, I wish I would have done this, but you can still go back and reshoot. Fuck you, Roger Moore, and the Bond film you wrote it on. Andrew Whalen of Newsweek didn't seem to like the movie very much either, saying What Keeps You Alive sacrifices its most interesting possibilities in favor of the squat simplicity of the cinematic psychopath, erasing psychological complexity and otherwise compelling characters.
Well, what an interesting word to use, squat. Something, choices were made. That was intentional. I'm not sure that's the right word, but, you know.
Yeah, squat, psychological complexity.
And my favorite, over at NPR, Glenn Weldon's review headline for the film reads, when you marry a killer, the anniversary gifts are murder. Stupid. In his review, he states, for the ending to play out in precisely the way it does, several leaps of logic, I'm talking Olympic-level narrative long jumps, are required. But so what? In the moment, it scans. As soon as the lights come up in the theater and things like reason and coherence reassert themselves around you, that moment, like the film that precedes it, is likely to evaporate from your consciousness. But as it's unfolding, What Keeps You Alive delivers on its promise and serves as yet another reminder that cabins in the woods are to hapless movie characters what sausage grinders are to livestock. I had to throw that in there.
I mean, yeah, well, we're going to get into the movie, and as why that, I think that, review is pretty concise and straightforward. You know what I mean? I don't know. It does have a little bit of accolades, though. At the Mullins Film Festival in 2018, it was nominated for Best Film, Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Actress for Brittany Allen.
Oh, so almost accolades.
Almost, yes.
Okay.
I don't know what that film festival is either, so I mean, I'm just like trying to find something.
Yeah. So I feel like the first thing I want to talk about with this movie is how good it looks.
Oh my God. Yeah. I completely agree with you. I was struck by this movie the first time that I watched it, right? For many reasons. And, I don't know. Yeah. I think the more times that I watched it, I was just like, my God, it really does look fantastic.
Yeah. The cinematography is excellent in this film. And so is the acting, honestly. The psycho, Jackie, played by Hannah Emily Anderson, is kind of iconic in this, especially when she puts on her like little black dress during the dinner party and stuff. She just looks so psycho chic, like Sharon Stone reborn, just on the verge of parting her legs. Yeah. I mean, she just looks like I hope that I see her in more movies because she was excellent.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think even more iconic than that little black dress, although it was very nice when she's like pulling her hair back into a ponytail because she knows she's going hunting for her wife. You know what I mean? Like she just looks so unexpectedly evil in certain parts of this movie because she doesn't start out that way.
No.
I mean, like she starts out, as sort of this like loving, doting wife celebrating her anniversary. And, toward the end of the first act of the movie, she's like something completely different. She's like a bear huntress and whatnot, Well, they kind of put a lantern on it because I was like, I'm not sure which one of these people are evil. And then she like breaks out the guitar and it's like, I'm a demon. It's like, what the fuck? That long ass fucking song she sings.
I'm like, we get it. You're the bad guy.
And finally her wife has to stop her and she's like, okay, that's lovely.
Okay, let's put it down. It's time for sex. It's time for sexy times.
But yeah, I think she's a great villain. I mean, like over the top, for sure, as far as the acting goes, right? But I think the character lends itself to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just really, really enjoy her as a villain in this movie. I just do. Kind of far better than I do Brittany Allen, who plays Jules, sort of the victim.
Our Ripley of the film, really.
Yeah, I mean, the haircut.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like Brittany Allen did an amazing job, and obviously I didn't know she did the music before that. I mean, I did all this fact finding for this movie, and I didn't catch that somehow. So I'm glad you did. But no, it's she did an amazing job. It's just that she was kind of upstaged by the scenery chewing, the elegant scenery chewing of Hannah, who played Jackie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Brittany Allen did a good job as a victim, right? I think that she sort of plays like a convincing woman who's sort of thrown apart, by her marriage sort of crumbling on her first anniversary in the woods or whatever. Yeah. And I mean, like she's very convincing about like being torn about my wife just pushed me over the cliff, but I want to go back and talk to her some more. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I think she's really, really good. It's a really small cast too. So
this is only a 4-person cast, right? So we had Sarah, the childhood friend, played by Martha McIsaac, and she did a great job. I mean, they were all serviceable. I mean, Joey Klein, he had a couple lines before he was murdered, but it's literally only a 4-person cast with Bird. So crap.
Yeah, I thought that Martha McIsaac was good as her friend, right? Because I mean, she's also playing like, didn't she tell you? I mean, she really is just like the pivot in the movie. She's like, oh, she didn't tell you about our dead friend? Oh. Yeah.
She also has that thing going on her face where, she's saying one thing and thinking another. And it's, there's multiple layers there. And I think that had to be played just right. And it was. She had a very, very important pivotal role in this movie. However, it's just one of those things where it's like there's no small part, Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as Joey Klein goes, I mean, I think that he's kind of cute, and he pretty much always has a drink in his hand the entire movie. So I really respect that as a character. I mean, like, okay. I mean, come on.
Well, let's talk about the background a little bit. Obviously, we already talked about Colin Minihan a little bit, but this was written and directed by him. What I didn't know was that he's part of a brother combo, like so many others that are, happening, like the Wachowski, sisters now, and the Duffer Brothers who did Stranger Things, and the guys that did the Avengers movies or the Endgame and Infinity War are brothers, I guess. And
I don't know their name.
But these guys have kind of, I don't know whether they coined it or someone coined it, but they call themselves the Vicious Brothers.
Well, I think that Colin Minihan has sort of like stepped out of that combo.
Yeah, I think a little bit. Like this was, I think, Soul Direction, and then I think something else was. But they did Grave Encounters 1 and 2, Extraterrestrial. Of course, It Stains the Sands Red, one of your other favorite films of his, and then Spiral, which you didn't like as much, and coming soon, the Urban Legend reboot,
which I'm very excited about. So I really like Colin Minihan. I think that he is one of my favorite like current horror directors, just because I really loved Grave Encounters, the first one. I haven't seen the second one, but as far as like found footage movies goes, I think it's really, really good and very scary.
Okay.
Extraterrestrial was also great. It was just a really good.
God, I haven't seen any of these.
Kind of like Cabin in the Woods alien movie. Like it was great, but It Stains the Sand Red was just his. Like he directed that one on his own, and I really appreciate that movie. Another small cast, sort of vast expanse of a setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote Spiral, so he's got his like fingerprints all over like current horror, and I'm very excited to see what he does with the Urban Legend reboot. And we recently had a person leave a voicemail about Urban Legend, right? So, I mean, yeah, there's things to talk about with that, and I think that it's a good choice for him to pick that up. I think he can do something really cool with it.
As long as he keeps whoever the cinematographer was.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, because really, some of those shots of like trees and things like that were just gorgeous. The lake.
Well, everything was really well framed too. Like everything was put together really well. There was one scene where near the end, I think she's like doing her Ripley moment, getting ready to fight or whatever, fight back Jules or whatever. But there's like so many God rays of light coming through the window in this like musty cabin in the woods. I'm like, okay, tone it down.
You could like see the dust particles in those rays of light. I mean, it really is like a well shot movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say too, I mean, so we have What Keeps You Alive and we have Spiral, both of which talk about LGBT themes, right? We have gay couples in both of these movies, lesbians and, gays. And I really like that he gives nods to that in horror. And I kind of like the fact that he doesn't make the plot only about them being gay, right?
Well, I think he tripped into that with this film, right? Yeah. And it just kind of happened that way. And of course, he's not gay himself, right? If his wife is her, is Jules,
right?
And then I think maybe he, on that success, decided to kind of move forward with that and do Spiral.
Mm-hmm. And like we said earlier, I mean, like you said just then too, it was originally written to be a man and a woman playing these roles, right? I can only assume that the man would have been hunting the woman in the woods, right? And by God, how many times have we seen that?
I would have rather been another Debbie situation.
Really? Yeah. I mean, it's Deborah, and I know how to shoot a gun. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I kind of like the fact that they did this. They sort of changed it up a little bit for whatever reason, and I could not find a reason why they had to make this choice in the movie to change it to two women.
Mm-hmm. And this is solid, like, Canadian horror. This is filmed in Canada, and all of his, he's Canadian, I believe, and all of his movies are Canadian or considered Canadian horror movies. And I'm right there for it.
I think even Spiral takes place in Canada. I mean, I just saw it the one time and I wasn't super impressed by it, but I mean, yeah, Canadian horror.
Well, let's talk about the themes of this Canadian horror film.
Okay.
Well, obviously it's a thriller with a final girl aspect. I don't know that it's kind of subverted at all, but it's a little bit of a twist because of the lesbian aspect to it.
Yeah, the thing that gets subverted for me when talking about the final girl and the thriller aspect of this is that I think that there are a lot of preconceived notions about what lesbians look like, right, in relationships. And I think that most maybe straight people, I mean, I don't want to like call you guys out, right? But like when you see a woman who's a lesbian who has like shorter hair, you would think that she'd be the more athletic one, the more person who's willing to like go into the wilderness and hunt someone down, right? But in this one, we have someone who has like sort of longer hair, and like it's sort of like shocking to see that kind of change in that character, right?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of subversion of the stereotype. And of course, we riddled our synopsis, lovingly with stupid stereotypes that aren't true, but obviously it's kind of a subversion that let's say the quote unquote lipstick lesbian that audiences would expect is the one that's doing the hunting.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I mean. I just like, you would expect that, the quote unquote lip
shits. Sorry. Pop.
The quote unquote Cicero to be, you would think that, the more feminine looking lesbian would be the one fighting for her life, right? But it's not, right? We have this like really feminine looking lesbian hunting down the more masculine looking lesbian. And I really love that about this movie.
Agreed. I thought that was a neat trick. Although they did give away rather quickly with the demon song.
And I think the first time that I saw this movie, I didn't quite pick up on that. I think that I was super wrapped up in it. And I mean, I fucking love lesbians anyway. I just do, like, to my core. And so I was just like super excited to watch a lesbian horror movie. And I thought the song was weird, but I was just like, well, maybe she's got a little problem. I really thought that somebody was going to be attacking them from the outside. Like, that's what I was expecting the whole time watching that movie.
Yeah,
in the beginning.
Well, I knew, like, as soon as the guitar thing, like, as soon as she started singing, like, there's a demon inside, what I would have loved to make the cliff moment that much more poignant and shocking would have the other one sing it, right? And have the psycho actually looking and be really into the song, and then kind of do a little switcheroo where the other one shoves one of the cliffs to subvert audience expectations. Just that extra click, you know what I mean? Bring it up to 11 a little bit.
Well, I mean, I kind of like that idea as well. I think that would have made it a little bit more shocking, right? Although it's still kind of shocking when she pushes her off that cliff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Still is. Because I have to say, the editing and pacing of this film are also excellent. They really did it very intentionally and surgically. And I thought, almost too much. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But another thing that really struck me upon retrospection of the film was, like the whole vibe of the cabin in the woods. They got out into the forest, they got out into the lake, and it's not like Evil Dead where you're stuck at that cabin and it's an immediate vicinity, right? But the forest lake environment really gave it a sense of claustrophobia, and agoraphobia at the same time. That's very reminiscent to me of space movies like Alien or even Pandorum or something like that, and I almost want to say that, like, this could have, like, something similar, or that you could have taken the script and made a tiny few changes and put this on a spaceship in the middle of space, and give it heightened that much, more of that aspect of it. It's kind of interesting to me that we take those stories and we put them in space. Like Alien was supposed to be The Shining in space, and it adds that level of claustrophobia or agoraphobia to it. It's just kind of fascinating to me.
I kind of like that you use the word space when you talk about that, right? Because obviously you're talking about like outer space.
Yes,
right?
the vast expanse, alien, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think like the space in its other definition about like the area that you're currently in, right, can be both like indoors or out, right? And I really like that, most Cabin in the Woods movies are like, it's really confined, very claustrophobic, like you said, right? But the house that they're in here is a gigantic fucking cabin, right? They spend a huge part of the opening of this movie of like watching Jules run from room to room, showing you just how really big it is, right? And then they go outside and there's like tons of forest to run through, right? A seemingly endless amount of forest. And then they get on the lake, which looks huge.
Yeah.
Right?
In Ontario, no one can hear you scream.
Yeah, So, I mean, like they really create this sense of like claustrophobia and no escape in these huge areas, I mean, I love it. I love that like juxtaposition of that, like feeling trapped, but having everywhere to go,
There's also the very poignant, like psychological horror of never really knowing what's going on in someone's head, despite how much you think you know them. Your significant other, 20 years later, someone turns out to be an axe murderer or, people go through this all the time with cheating, things like that. Or someone in your family committing some sort of heinous crime, that you never would have expected of them, or it's just something just insidious or manipulative, and it's like, we're all kind of paranoid about this. And maybe we don't even know what we would do, what our own selves would do in specific situations if we're backed into a corner, but who is the secret sociopath or psychopath in your life? It's kind of weird to think about.
And I think that's one of the scariest things about this movie and other horror movies too. It's not the first time that this kind of trope has like presented itself in horror, right? Like, not knowing the person you're closest to is incredibly frightening for everybody on a real life level.
Hello, Sydney. Yeah.
I mean, I think about like some Stephen King work where he does this about like people discovering a secret life or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really is just truly frightening to devote your life to somebody and then all of a sudden be like, oh, just kidding, I'm going to kill you.
Or, the person who's your number one fan might do you the most harm.
That's right. It's called Hotline.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that their themes abound in this movie. And I think that they get them across pretty well. I mean, visually and like with acting and all those things are kind of great. But I know that after we watched this together, that you had maybe some screenplay problems, right?
Yeah, there's some screenplay problems versus script or acting or cinematography or anything else, right? Like, I feel like this is problems that kind of happened in the structure of the film or even in the editing room. I don't know, versus like the final script, but it kept going, maybe because they were too close to it. I don't know, but like they did it to kind of move the story forward and keep the tension up, and the pacing is great, but there's like almost like a catch-22 there, right? Because, for example, I have a list.
Okay.
So when Sarah calls Jackie Megan, Jules is upset because she didn't know her wife had a different name. And Jackie tells her that she could explain, but then the film cuts and they don't talk about it until the next day, middle of the day, when they're floating in the fucking lake. Fine, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Let's go get ready for bed, sleep, have breakfast, go through the motions, and then wait till we're in this boat till I can explain that. No, that's going to happen as soon as they close the door. That's not realistic. That's not how conversation works.
I don't know. I kind of disagree. I feel like if my husband, we've been together for 10 years. Okay. If he was just like, just kidding, my name's not Robert, or someone called him something different, I would be like, okay, like we've been together for a long time. I'm going to sleep on this for now and we'll discuss it later on. I don't want to do it in the heat of the moment. Right. I don't know. Is that stupid?
No, because this is a childhood friend. She didn't bring it up. Right. It was her childhood friend. Like, that it's legit when she does, like, that's not even a nickname.
I mean, either way, I mean, we don't know what kind of fight they had.
It didn't have a fight because it was all like explaining the whole story behind it. So there was no explanation during a fight. That's the problem with that. Right. It's like time stopped. Time stops for us because they skip forward, but because of the screenplay, it also stopped for them. They couldn't actually talk about it until it restarted for us. Nothing happened off camera, literally nothing. That's how jarring it is for me personally. And this kind of thing continues, right? And I probably wouldn't have had a problem with it if it hadn't become a pattern. So like when Jules visits Sarah across the lake because it's bothering her to get more details, right? Sarah mentions the death of their childhood friend that Jackie might have had something to do with. She alludes to that and is shocked that Jackie hadn't told Jules that part of their history. And then it cuts. The conversation is dropped and no further questions are asked before it cuts to the next scene where she's already across lake. Who knows how she got back, and presumably she rode herself all the way back after that. But, she probably would have waited at least an hour or hung out or something during that time. She was winded. She got a drink, and everything else. And she was talking with those people. And that was the question on the floor. And she's like, oh, well, I'm not going to dig into this. I'm not going to ask you any probing questions on that. That's not how it works. They're just keeping it too close to the chest for the audience, but they're also just removing that from the world that we're in. And it's a little weird to me. After tranquilizing Jackie, Jules escapes, but decides to return, which, this is less of that weird time thing stopping for them and more of just a weird narrative thing to hey, well, we want this to happen in the story. So how are we going to make it happen? Well, we're just going to have her turn around and see a crow or something, She obviously wants to, prove to her that she's, she can, her crow can match up against the eagle. It's a fucking stupid subplot about birds, I guess, I kind of liked it, but it's a little weird. And she goes back and decides to return instead of going to the police, and everything else. And I felt like that wouldn't have been necessarily a dead end. Maybe for a small cast, you need to do that to maintain the illusion of a larger story. But I kind of wanted like a Hitcher kind of moment to play out there where the police do come, but she kills them. Kind of like it does in The Hitcher or something. And this is a big moment like, oh, I thought I was saved. The audience thought you were saved and subverted that. The police are no help here. That would have been more interesting to me than her. Well, I'm not going to go and get help. I just spent all this movie trying to escape and survive and get help. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to turn back around and confront this huntress. It's just like, it doesn't make sense to me. It was so frustrating when that happened in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like to think that she turned around because, like, she had some sort of, like, underlying feeling for her wife or whatever. I mean, like, yeah, her wife tried to kill her. And yeah, she spent the entirety of this movie trying to survive, right? What kept her alive was running or whatever, right? But I like to think that she turned around because she loved her very much and thought she could change her or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of, like, characterization I get from Jules. I
like that, but she had that earlier in the film and she got that shut down several times, not only by Jackie saying it's nature versus it's not nurture. Like, I am this way. I don't feel the same things you do. And here's all the necklaces of the other people I've done this to. You are a number in a line. That several points in the story shut that down for Jules. She didn't have hope for her. At that point, technically, she had already, I'm sure, done the whole insulin fiasco, which is the next thing.
Well, I mean, I think that for the viewer watching that she shouldn't have any hope for her wife because of everything that she had told her. Pushing her off a cliff, hunting her in the woods, making her chop up bodies, murdering people in front of her. I mean, like, yeah, for normal people, of course, you'd be like, okay, obviously I married a psycho, but I mean, there's got to be somebody out there who's like, I know you did all these things, but, I still kind of love you. I don't know. I mean, like, obviously never in real life would that happen, but there's got to be something. Maybe, I mean, like.
You're really doing some acrobatics to make this work.
I know. I'm like reaching like no other to like make this work, which is something that I really hate when people do, but.
It's okay though. It's okay, right? It's a piece of entertainment. And if you enjoyed it, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
But there is a thing too. I mean, like in real life, people are completely abused by their spouse and still like retain this like sense of love, and even respect for them.
But over months or years, right? When this thing's happening, because this things happen slowly, the gaslighting and the manipulation and other things. These things happen slowly, and you react to them slowly. But over a weekend, this is like 24 hours, like and I feel like she's running for her life here. She's half dead at that point and decides to turn around. So I don't know. We're going to beat this horse until it's chunky salsa.
Yeah, for real. I wish I would have seen a little bit more like flashbacks into their life, except for the only flashback we ever see is like them laying in bed and her going, I'm a crow or whatever, and like that doesn't really explain much except for why she turns the car around. I would have liked to have seen like just a normal Tuesday and what they did on that and whether or not she was acting like remotely like a psycho and maybe this person just like couldn't fucking realize who they were married to.
Almost like it's missing a first act before they get in the car and go or something.
Entirely. And I you know what? I've seen this movie like 5 times now, and I think that's absolutely right. So you're right. But you mentioned insulin, and that is another huge turning point in this movie. So I want to hear you talk about that. Yeah.
So first of all, those shots are surface shots, right? Like just under the skin. So like hydrogen peroxide would have instantly burned and bubbled up on the skin. Now, I'm very lenient towards those kinds of things, right? It's a movie, but I feel like this is fairly common knowledge about insulin shots, at least, right? It's not going into like a vein, you know? So, but, you know, secondly, Jackie could have easily found that stupid laptop video, you know, before she injected herself with it. It's just like these characters and the flow of the film is a slave to the screenplay so much that it's just like it's almost robotic in a way, how they get from A to B to C to D. You know what I mean? So it's like everything happened in the right order because it had to. And that was a little bit of a logical, like, narrative leap there that I wish had been done a little bit more carefully.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because we're given to, we're shown Jules sort of like helping her injuries or like setting her bones and like, you know, treating herself, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously she has some sort of medical training, right? Yeah. And there's an earlier shot where she's like giving Jackie the injection, right, in a flashback scene. So we know that she's diabetic and it comes full circle. But you're right. By the time that she like pulls that video, even before that, by the time she's giving herself the injection, I was like, oh, I forgot she's diabetic. And then she finds that video and I'm like, okay. So yeah, it really is just like it's a way to like just to complete the movie, right? To give somebody some comeuppance, I think. But yeah, in a really shoddy way.
Yeah, but overall, the screenplay feels to me like it's like overly manufactured to end up at certain story beats that it hasn't really earned. And there are leaps of logic to how actual conversations, character motivations, or even time works. And that's my major problem with this movie. Everything about it is technically well done. It's still paced very well. It's just, I think that's the caveat of that pace, is that they sacrificed some of those, you know, a little bit more careful, you know, softer transitions to achieve it.
Yeah, I mean, and I totally think that all of your points are valid. And like I said, I've seen this movie a good handful of times. And the first time I watched it, I was super, super impressed by it, you know? And, you know, on subsequent watches, I was just like, okay, it gets a little predictable. And I can see like how the screenplay flows in these ways, right? But, and I've shown this movie to a couple people and everyone seems to like it on first glance. But I wonder how some of these people would think on a second watch, you know? One of my favorite things about this movie is that we are finally given like a really good gay villain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like she's not a villain because she's gay. There wasn't some traumatic thing that happened in her life to turn her into this gay serial killer, right? She's just a serial killer who happens to be a lesbian. And I find it so refreshing that, you know, like you and I just watched Dressed to Kill recently, right? And so like someone's a killer because they're a transsexual, or so many movies we've seen where like they're evil because they're gay. And I'm so happy that we just have a movie with a gay villain that doesn't have to be explained by their life or their circumstances, you know? Like she said, it's nature versus nurture, and it's totally nature in this particular case. She's born that way, right? It's like the other fucking Gaga song. Yeah. But yeah, and I mean like, and I find it refreshing that they don't have to explain their relationship, right? And obviously it's because it wasn't even written that way. And they sort of like stumbled across it.
Yeah. Something you said kind of struck me, because there has been use of LGBT characters in horror. And especially if you look back at the 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of it is, well, Dressed to Kill, like you said, you know, is kind of used kind of in a problematic way. Right. Oh, yeah. And sometimes really outright problematic. I'm thinking of like sleepover camp or whatever, sleepaway camp and things like that, you know, and in some cases like, oh, yeah, well, it's because she was a lesbian, it's because he was a gay, you know, or because they're transitioning or something like that. And this, I don't feel like is the same thing because it's so normalized. They're already in a loving, normal kind of relationship, at least from the outside. And certainly from Jules' point of view. And so it's a lot healthier way to portray a lesbian or gay, trans, bi villain.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's exactly how I feel. And I kind of hope that people can watch this movie and have the same kind of thing. I would love to see more gay or lesbian representation on screen where we don't have to explain the reasons why. So this is our third Pride Month of doing the Film Flamers, right? And I think that there are some problematic depictions of gay people in the movies that we've covered thus far.
Certainly in the next one we're going to deep dive.
Which I don't even quite sure that we can call them lesbians, you know? But yeah, so I mean, I think that this is the most refreshing view of gay people in a horror movie, if that's even a thing, you know? Even in Spiral, which Colin Minihan wrote and came out last year, the whole plot revolves around them being gay, you know? And why and so I'm just like, no. Like, I like this one a lot better. I think she's a great villain.
I've been a broken record about, you know, gay needs to be incidental. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, you're right. I mean, it's exactly what we need. You know, I keep seeing all these gay horror movies and like, it's not what I'm really looking for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I'll take the representation still.
Agreed.
All right. Well, I think we have some questions to ask about what keeps you alive, like we do about every movie we deep dive on the Film Flamers. And we're going to start with Chris. What keeps you alive? I mean, I kind of want to know, like, obviously what keeps Jackie alive in this movie is killing off her wives and, living off their insurance.
Yeah.
Money.
To her, it's no different than animals. You know, it was a little weird for me to wrap my head around that and how she was explaining it. I was trying to work it out in my mind while I was watching the movie. I'm like, what keeps you alive? There's easier ways to say that. I don't know. What keeps me alive? Sometimes all I need is the air that I breathe.
That is an excellent answer. Thank you.
And to love
all you need is the air that you breathe and to love me. No, but seriously, is what keeps you alive a horror movie?
Yes, obviously.
Yeah.
Straightforward.
Clearly.
Straightforward.
I don't even think that Colin Minahan would call it a thriller. I think that if he had his druthers, he would just call it a horror.
There's enough slasher and everything else, but who cares? You know, It's all horror.
There's tons of slasher elements in this movie. And I mean, if we're going to have a final girl conversation about a movie, clearly I think that it's a horror film.
Well, if that's the case, then you could say that Drop Dead Gorgeous is Final Girl.
Yeah. I mean, I would call that a horror movie too, though. So.
Yeah.
Were you scared while watching What Keeps You Alive?
No.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I mean, like, oddly. I think the first time I watched it, I was really into it and I felt a lot of tension.
Yeah.
And I had completely, like, just suspended my disbelief. And even the predictable parts, I wasn't even paying attention to. And so, like, I was gasping a lot.
Yeah, I might have grasped my décolletage area during the cliff scene.
I also wasn't expecting it to be as violent as it was and as bloody as it turned out to be in certain parts. So
yeah,
I liked it. I was probably even scared the first time I watched it when she was singing that demon song, or maybe just bored. I don't know. One of the two.
Yeah.
So out of 5 stars, what would you rate What Keeps You Alive?
I gave it a 3 just because of those problems that I had. If I had to just do it on acting and technical direction and cinematography and everything else, then I would say, obviously a higher rating. But overall, as a package, I have to give it 3 stars. And I've started actually writing little mini reviews on Letterboxd. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to read it.
Please.
Gorgeously shot, wonderfully acted, and well-paced, What Keeps You Alive is a memorable experience and a reminder that those we hold most dear may not be the people we think they are. Unfortunately, there are numerous screenplay issues and leaps of logic that keep this thriller from becoming truly great.
I love that. I don't know what I would write about this movie, except maybe it's Megan. I give this movie 4 stars. I think it's solidly a 4-star movie. I think that the first time I watched it and I pulled it up on Letterboxd, my first viewing of this was 4.5 stars. So I haven't gone down too much. I still think it's incredibly enjoyable. I really like its pacing. I don't really have a problem with it. I think that it's keeps me on edge for most of it. And I really, really enjoy the acting, especially from Hannah Emily Anderson. I think that she's just fantastic.
But especially Lisa.
So yeah, that's good. I think 3 stars is a good rating for this movie.
Yeah.
So it's good.
So I guess the official Film Flamers rating would be 3.5.
Yes. I am not going to ask you who you think the hottest guy in this movie is, because there's only one guy in it, and that would be like, I don't know.
The bear?
Yeah. Oh my God, I do love
an actual real bear, though. No, Joey Klein was cute enough. So yeah,
he was
we could
cute.
say he's by default, de facto.
I would say that the cast in this movie is overly attractive. Like, all of them were really good looking. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a Canadian thing. I don't know, but I liked them all.
Yeah.
Even the lesbians.
That's literally half the cast, so.
Oh. Well, I think that just about wraps up our conversation on What Keeps You Alive. I really loved this movie when I first watched it, and I've been singing its praises since then. And we would like to know what you think about this movie. So head over to social media, find us at The Film Flamers on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
You can email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com, or you can call our hotline at 972-666-7733. Hot podcasters with hog body are standing by.
Speak for your fucking self. No. Like Chris hinted at earlier, we have another movie with some lesbian qualities coming out for you later this month, and we're going to be talking about what movie?
Wild Things.
Wild Things, that's right. Featuring a lesbian kiss and Kevin Bacon's dick.
That's right.
Deliciously trashy. If you can't get enough of the Film Flamers, guys, head over to patreon.com/thefilmflamers to find all of our bonus content.
This month we're covering Sebastian, the only film ever to be spoken in Latin, interestingly. And it's completely filmed with all the way through with naked guys. So if you can find that, I think there was like 2 copies left on Amazon, or stream it on I think some university has it in their public library you have to pay to get access to, but good luck finding it, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
That's right, because it is riddled with dick.
Yes.
Also, if you really want to help us out and help other people find our podcast, head over to Apple Podcasts or iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, a little snippet of why you like us, and we're going to read that on our next Shooting the Flames.
We promise. Well, Robert, this himbo is a kimbo, so I need to go.
I can totally see that on the screen. And I think what keeps me alive is beer, and I'm fresh out. So I think it's time for us to go off and have some
sweet dreams.
If we were ever hiking, you'd be the last person I would think would push me off a cliff. So that means you're probably the first person that would push me off a cliff.
No, I promise. No. You're at the bottom of my list.
Oh, what keeps us alive?
Plus, I have to find a gay cliff of doom. And you're not a lesbian.
That's like a diving board.
A diving board into lube. No. This Pride Month, we're being really homophobic.
Strike the entire episode. We'll try again tomorrow.